The sky above the mining colony was always gray. Smoke, dust, and ash floated like ghosts. Nothing grew here. Nothing lived here except those forced to. John sat alone on a broken crate, holding a small metal food tray in his lap. The food was cold. Just a dry bread slice and some protein paste. Nothing special, but for him, it was all he had. It was his last meal for the day. No seconds. No snacks. No kindness. He had worked 16 hours hauling rocks for the alien overseers, his hands blistered, back aching. But this small meal was his only reward. Across the dirty yard, behind the tall electric fence, he noticed movement. Children. Small, skinny figures. Not human, alien children. They were hiding behind an old cargo container, peeking out. Their skin was pale blue. Big, dark eyes. Thin arms. One of them, a very small one, was trying to pick up a crust of bread off the ground. John paused. The little one dropped the bread. It was too weak to hold it. Its hands trembled. Then it fell. Face first. John stood up, food tray still in hand. His stomach growled, but he didn't listen. He walked across the yard, ignoring the warning shouts of other humans. Hey, don't go near them. They're not our problem. They're just alien beggars. But John kept walking. The kids noticed him. They panicked at first, some running behind the crate, but the eldest didn't move. A girl, maybe 13 in their years, stepped forward protectively. Her eyes met his. John knelt slowly. He didn't speak. He just slid the tray of food forward, placing it on the dirty ground in front of her. The girl looked at the food, then at him. Then back at the food again. She didn't touch it. The small one, still lying on the ground, lifted its head weakly. The girl carefully helped the little one sit up and took a piece of the bread. She gently placed it in the younger child's mouth. They ate slowly, carefully, like it was treasure. John smiled a little, then stood up to walk away. But before he could turn, something happened. The eldest girl knelt right there in front of him. She placed both knees on the ground and lowered her head. She bowed, not like a slave, not like someone scared. It was different. It was deep, powerful, ancient. John froze. He looked around. Even the human workers nearby had stopped talking. The other alien kids copied her. One by one, they bowed too, heads lowered, hands pressed to the ground, silent, but full of meaning. John didn't know what to do. I just gave you food, he said softly. I'm no one. But they didn't move. They stayed bowed, as if waiting for something. He backed away slowly, confused. Back at the worker barracks, his friends asked him what had happened. You fed them? One man said, shocked. Why would you do that? They're just aliens, another said. They wouldn't do the same for you. John didn't answer. He stared out the window, across the yard, in the shadows. The alien girl was watching him again. She was still kneeling, still waiting. The next morning. John stepped out of the worker barracks, still feeling the ache in his bones. His muscles were stiff, his shoulders sore. But something felt different. Eyes, key. Could feel them. He turned slowly. There she was, the alien girl from last night. The one who bowed. She was standing across the yard. Her pale blue skin glowed slightly in the early morning light. Her long arms hung by her side, and her big black eyes watched him without blinking. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She just stared. John rubbed his face. Maybe she'll go away, he muttered. She didn't. He walked toward the mining site. She followed. He picked up his shovel. She followed. Even when the guards yelled at her, even when the other human workers gave her ugly looks, she stayed close. She didn't make a sound. She just stood nearby, always watching, One of the human men, a big guy named Reese, leaned close and said, "You made a mistake, man. Give a little food, and now you've got yourself a pet." John didn't reply, but deep inside, he knew it wasn't that simple. This girl wasn't begging. She wasn't looking for more food. She was looking for him. At lunch, John sat under the old tower, biting into a piece of dry ration. The other workers laughed and joked, trying to ignore the heat. The alien girl sat on a crate nearby, still silent. Then something unexpected happened. She stood up, walked over, and carefully placed something on the ground next to him. It was a small, cracked wooden bowl. Inside it bears red, shiny, clean dot. He stared. "Are these for me?" She nodded once. He took one and bit into it. Sweet, juicy, real food. "Thank you," he whispered. She sat back down, folding her legs under her. Watching again, John wasn't used to kindness, especially not from strangers, especially not from aliens. Later that day, a storm of wind kicked up across the camp. Dust flew into the air, blinding the workers. Machines shut down. One of the smaller human workers, a teen named Kyle, slipped and fell near the edge of a moving loader. John rushed forward before he could reach Kyle. The alien girl was already there. She yanked the boy out of danger. Kyle gasped. She saved me." The guards came running. "What is she doing here? Get back, alien." But John stepped in front of them. "She saved a human," he said firmly. "She didn't break any rule." The guards hesitated. Then one of them shoved John. "She's not allowed near the machines. Can you stay out of it?" John clenched his fists. The alien girl gently touched his elbow. He looked down. She shook her head. No anger. No fight. Just calm. Back at the barracks that night, Reese frowned. That alien girl risked herself for Kyle. "That's not normal." John nodded. "She's different. Do you think she's planning something?" "No," John said quietly. "I think she's learning." Reese raised an eyebrow. "Learning what?" John looked out the window. She was there again, outside, sitting still, watching the lights inside the barracks. Watching him, he spoke softly, mostly to himself. "She's learning how to be like us." Next morning, as the sun rose, John stepped outside again. The same familiar chill was in the air, but something had changed. Not just the girl. More alien children stood beside her now. 3, no, 5 of them. All quiet, all watching. John stepped forward. "What's this?" The girl stepped ahead. She pointed to herself and said one word, "Lyra." Her voice was soft but strong. It was the first time he had heard her speak. John nodded slowly. "Lyra." She pointed to the younger kids behind her, then pointed to him. And then she did something strange. She pressed her open hand to her chest, then held that hand out to him. John hesitated, but then he copied her hand to chest, then hand forward. She smiled for the first time. Not big, just enough. That night, the wind howled across the dusty hills. Inside the barracks, John wrote something in his small journal. "The girl's name is Lyra. She brings others now. She watches everything, not like a child, like a student, like a leader learning how to lead." He paused, then added, "And today, I followed her too." Whispers, they traveled faster than wind through the mining camp. He gave aliens food. They bowed to him. Now more of them follow. He's starting something dangerous. The guards didn't like whispers, especially not ones about unity, especially not between humans and aliens. John didn't mean to start anything. He just did what felt right. He gave food. He showed kindness. But now, it had grown into something else. Something big, too big. That morning, when John walked toward the worksite, he noticed the guards were watching him differently. Not bored, not tired, but alert, narrow eyes. Tight grips on their stun batons. Murmurs between radios. Lyra was walking. Beside him again, silent and calm. 4 other alien kids walked behind her like shadows. One of the guards stepped forward. Big, red-armored, rank stripes on the shoulder. "Stop right there." The guard barked. John did. Lyra froze. The guard pointed. At her, "She's not allowed in the main work zones anymore." John frowned. "Why?" "She's a distraction. She's gathering a group." "That's not allowed." John kept his voice steady. "They're just children." The guard leaned closer. "Children become crowds. Crowds become mobs. And mobs burn things." John didn't move. "They've hurt no one." The guard's lips curled. Yet, without warning, he reached forward to grab Lyra. John blocked him. It wasn't violent. It's just a single step between them. A hand raised. "She hasn't done anything," John said. "If you touch her, it's you who starts the fire." The guard stared. Silent then, he lowered his hand. "This is your warning," he said coldly. "One more step out of line, and we erase both of you." That night, John sat in the shadows of the barracks. He didn't sleep. He COULDN, single quotes, T.Lyra. And the children had gone back to their broken shelter near the scrapyard. But something stayed with him, the way the guards had looked at them. Like enemies. Like threats. He heard movement behind him. It was Reese. "You're in deep now," the big man said, sitting beside him. "I didn't plan for this," John muttered. "But it's happening," Reese replied. "Even the other workers see it. The way those kids follow you, the way that girl bows. They act like you're their king or something." John shook his head. "I'm not a king." "No," Reese said. "But to them, you're more than a man. You gave food when no one else did. That changes things." The next day, something strange happened. John arrived at the yard early. He was ready for work, but when he got there, he found a small crowd of humans standing still, staring in the middle of the yard, near the fuel tanks. Someone had scratched strange markings into the dirt, symbols, alien symbols. John recognized them. He'd seen them near Lyra's shelter. Old carvings, ancient words. One of the guards shouted, "Who did this?" No one answered. The symbols glowed faintly, catching the light. There was something peaceful about them. But the guards didn't see peace. They saw danger. One of them turned to John. "You know what this says?" John didn't lie. No, but inside, he guessed it was a message. A sign. The children had written something from their old ways. A quiet declaration, a beginning. That evening, Lyra appeared again. She came alone this time. She waited by the edge of the yard until John approached. "Was it you?" he asked softly. She nodded. "What does it mean?" She looked up at him, eyes deep and clear. "It means you remember." John was quiet. She added, "You gave your last bite to us. Now we give back." John asked, "What are you giving?" She placed something in his hand. A necklace. Handmade, small polished stones tied with wire. Q. In the center, a carved tooth with "Alien Runes Leader," she whispered. John blinked. "I'm not," but she shook her head. "You are. Not because you speak loud, but because you care." Later that night, inside the command tower, the guards were in a meeting. Screens glowed. Maps blinked. Voices hissed through radio links. "He's changing them," one officer said. "He has to be watched. He might lead a rebellion." The captain frowned. He gave food to starving kids. And now they treat him like a prophet. If this spreads... Silence fell. The captain stared at a photo on the screen, John walking beside Lyra. Then he gave the order. Follow him. Day and night. If he steps out of line, end it. Far below the tower, in the dirt and silence, John sat with Lyra and the others. No words. Just warmth. Just peace. But danger was coming, and the children had already chosen their side. Asterisk. The sky turned orange. The sun on this planet never looked kind. It always looked angry, like it was warning something was coming. John followed Lyra through the scrap fields, stepping over twisted metal and broken glass. The other alien children moved silently behind them, forming a line. No one spoke. They had asked him to come, not with words, but with their eyes. Now he was walking into the unknown. Where are we going? John asked. Lyra looked back once, her expression unreadable. To the place before hunger. He didn't understand, but he didn't stop. They reached a broken gate hidden behind tall steel sheets. Lyra pushed it open slowly. Inside was a hidden space underground, like a tunnel that once belonged to a different world. Old lights flickered. The walls were covered in symbols, carvings, stories written in alien hands. John's breath caught. It felt sacred. Lyra stepped in front of him and pointed to a giant stone in the center of the room. On it was carved a single scene, a figure tall, thin, human-looking, giving food to a group of starving alien children. Around him were strange animals, fallen stars, and fire. "What is this?" John whispered. "It is a trial," Lyra replied. "Only one who gives in hunger can lead in peace." John turned to her. "You think that's me?" She didn't nod. She bowed. A fire was lit in the center. Not large. Just enough, the air filled with smoke and memory. Lyra turned to the circle of children and said something. In her language, it was soft, like wind through bones. Then she turned back to John. "You must sit here," she said. He obeyed. She placed in front of him an old plate. On it nothing. "Is this a joke?" he asked, half smiling. "No," she said seriously. "This is the first hunger." "What does that mean?" Lyra knelt beside him. "Long ago, our kind were tested. Starved, beaten, only one offered food. When they had none, that one became the first leader." John frowned. "But I have no food," she whispered. "Exactly." For 3 hours, John sat in silence. The children sat around him, not moving, just watching. His stomach growled. His lips dried. The air turned colder. Then, one of the younger kids stood up, slowly walked over. In her small hand, she held a single dried fruit, something she had saved from who knows when she placed it on John's plate. He stared at it. He was starving, but he didn't touch it. Instead, he looked at the girl. He picked up the fruit, broke it in two, and gave the bigger half back to her. The circle gasped quietly. The girl smiled wide and took it. John chewed the small piece left in his hand slowly. His throat ached, but his heart felt light. Lyra stepped forward. "You passed," he blinked. "That was it." She nodded. "You gave again." Even when hungry, she touched the carving on the stone. "This is what the old ones spoke of. A leader who feeds before he eats, protects before he rests." The other children stood up, and one by one, they placed their hands on John's shoulders. It wasn't just a ritual, it was real. Suddenly, a loud voice echoed through the tunnel. "Step away from the human." John turned sharply. Guards stopped, 3 of them. How did they find this place? Their boots echoed as they entered the chamber. The fire cast long shadows across their armor. The lead guard raised his stun gun. "You're not allowed here, worker." Gone. Stood, slowly putting himself between the guards and the kids. "We're not doing anything wrong," he said calmly. "You're holding secret meetings with aliens." You think that's allowed? We're just sharing food. Lies, the guard snapped. You're stirring up rebellion. Lyra stepped beside John, eyes blazing. He gave when others did not. The guard laughed. He's a worker. A nobody? You want to worship that? She didn't speak. She bowed. Deep, then she stood again and said, yes. The guard stepped forward, anger rising. That's it. He's under arrest. John didn't resist. He raised his hands. Don't hurt them. But Lyra shouted something in her native tongue. And the children formed a line between him and the guards. No, she said fiercely. If you take him, you take all of us. The guards paused. It was supposed to be easy. But now, even children stood against them. The tension in the air was heavy. One guard looked nervous. We're not cleared to harm alien minors. The lead guard gritted his teeth. Fine, but we're taking him. They grabbed John by the arms and dragged him toward the exit. Lyra ran after them. He looked back, once his eyes meeting hers. I'm okay, he said. Stay strong. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just whispered to herself. He passed the hunger. The holding cell was cold. John sat on a metal bench with his hands cuffed in front of him. A dim yellow light buzzed above, flickering like it might die at any moment. Outside the bars, 2 guards stood watch, silent, angry, intense. He didn't. Know how long he'd been locked in there? His back hurt. His stomach burned from hunger. But worse than pain was the thought of Lyra and the kids. Were they okay? Were the guards planning to hurt them next? Meanwhile, in the hidden shelter beneath a scrapyard, Lyra stood in front of the fire. The carved wall behind her glowed with the orange flames. She held John's journal in her hand, the one he used to write his thoughts. She had taken it after the guards arrested him. The children gathered around her. Some cried. Others sat in silence, waiting. Lyra opened the book and read from the last page. They're not just alien kids anymore. They're brave. They watch. They learn. I think. Maybe they've always been stronger than we ever saw. All they needed was someone to believe it. She closed the book. Then she spoke. He believed in us. He gave when he had nothing. Now we give something back. She looked at the youngest among them. Bring the bowl. The child hurried forward with a small wooden bowl filled with food berries, dried roots, and something warm. It was everything the children had saved over days. All of it. A meal, a sacred one. For the leader, Lyra said. That night, the guards were surprised when they heard a knock on the outer gate. Bang, bang, bang. 3 alien children stood outside, holding the wooden bowl carefully with both hands. We bring food, one of them said, for the prisoner. Another added. The guards laughed. No visitors allowed, one replied. But then one of the children pointed behind them. Dozens more. Alien children stood in the shadows. Then, adults began to arrive. Alien mothers, old grandfathers. Workers. Silent, watching. A crowd was forming. One of the guards cursed under his breath. What is this? The head guard ordered. Let them. Give the food. One visit. Okay. In the cell, John was sitting with his eyes closed when the door clicked open. He looked up. Lyra stepped in, holding the bowl with both hands. Behind her stood a nervous officer. You've got 5 minutes, he growled. John stood slowly. Lyra, she, placed the bowl down and knelt. Then she lifted the food and offered it to him. John blinked. He remembered the trial, the test of hunger, the meaning of sharing food. But this wasn't a test anymore. It was a declaration. He sat down across from her. She took one small piece of bread and held it to his lips. He didn't stop her. He ate it. Then he took a berry and gave it to her. They ate together slowly with care. The officer stared, confused. What are they doing? Another guard whispered. It's some kind of alien ritual. Like a bond, John smiled softly. It's not just food, it's trust. When the meal ended, Lyra stood and bowed again. But this time, she didn't do it alone. Behind her, as the cell door opened, dozens of children and alien adults stood. Silently, and every single one of them bowed. Right there, in front of the guards, the cameras, and the humans. They lowered their heads to a single. Human. John, the captain of the security forces, watched from the control room. He frowned. This is getting out of hand. They're treating him like royalty, said one officer. Like a chosen one. He's just a worker, the captain snapped. But to them, he's more. Later that night, Reese met John outside the barracks. Somehow, the guards had released him without explanation. What happened? Reese asked. Why'd they let you go? John looked tired but calm. They were afraid. Of what? John looked at the stars. Of a meal, he said quietly. Of what it meant. Reese didn't understand. But Lyra did. She watched from the shadows. Holding the empty wooden bowl like it was made of gold, back in the shelter, a quiet song rose from the children's lips. It was older than the mining colony, older than the war. A song of leaders, a song of hunger and hope. And in that moment, for the first time in a long, long time, John felt full. The night air was heavy. Smoke from campfires mixed with the thick dust of the mining colony. Machines still roared in the distance, but something was different in the air. Something tense. Something waiting. John sat outside the barracks with his back against the wall. His clothes were dirty, his hands scraped, but his heart, it felt warm. The children had bowed. Lyra had fed him with her own hands. And now, everywhere he walked, eyes followed him, not with suspicion, but with hope. Alien workers nodded at him. Even some human miners gave him quiet respect. But the guards watched like wolves. They hadn't forgotten, and they hadn't forgiven. Deep inside the guard tower, the captain stared at the surveillance screens. Every angle, every room. He saw alien children gathering around John near the storage crates. He saw adults joining them now, even humans sitting nearby. Listening. It's not a story anymore, the captain said. It's a movement. One of his officers nodded. Permission to break it up. The captain narrowed his eyes. No. Not yet. We'll wait for them to slip up. Then we strike. That evening, Lyra lit a fire in the middle of the old underground shelter. The flames danced low, casting long shadows on the carved walls. John stood quietly, watching the children form a circle around him. What is this? He asked. Lyra stepped forward, holding a worn cloth in her hands. Inside, it is single silver. Pendant, rough, handmade, but beautiful. She held it high. In our old ways, she said softly, a leader is not crowned with gold or throne. A leader is recognized with fire and a bow. The children all turned toward him. He looked down at himself, just a tired, hungry human who gave away his last bite. This isn't right, he whispered. I'm not one of you. You are. Now, Lyra said, one by one. The children stepped forward and bowed deeply before the fire. Then, slowly, Lyra walked to John and bowed too. But it wasn't just her. From the shadows behind, alien adults stepped into the light. Miners, farmers, even old ones with bent backs. All of them knelt, all of them bowed. John felt his throat tighten. I don't deserve this, said. Lyra looked up. But you didn't ask for it. That's why you do. Outside, near the edge of the camp, guards watched the growing crowd. Look at them, one muttered, bowing to a human. The lead guard, the one who had arrested John before, clenched. His fists. He thinks he's untouchable now. A voice crackled on the radio. Orders from command. Break the gathering. The guard smiled. Gladly. Without warning, the heavy gates slammed open. Metal boots stomped on the dirt. Electric batons crackled to life. The firelight flickered as 10 guards stormed into the shelter with weapons drawn. Everyone on the ground. The lead guard shouted. This gathering is illegal. The children screamed. Adults raised their hands. Lyra stepped in front of John, but he quickly pulled her behind him. Stop. John shouted. They're just kids. The lead guard stepped closer. You're not in charge here. You're no one. But then, something happened. Lyra walked out again, alone. She stepped between John and the guards. She faced the fire and bowed deep, slow, unshaken. I follow him, she said. Another child stepped beside her and bowed. Then another, then another. Soon, every child was on their knees, faces to the ground. Then the adults, even old miners, lowered their heads. The shelter glowed with fire and silence. The guards froze. Even they could feel it. This wasn't a protest. It was a devotion, a power not made of weapons, but of will. The lead guard shouted, "You all bow to a human, a worker, a nothing." No one answered him, because in that moment, their answer was clear. The fire, the silence. The bow. John stepped forward slowly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a speech. He just looked at the guards. "If you strike now," he said, "you strike children, elders, families." He spread his arms. "You'll break your own image, not ours." The guards hesitated. One of them lowered his baton. Then another. The lead guard growled, but he knew it. This wasn't a fight he could win, not tonight, not with eyes watching from every direction as the guards backed out. Lyra rose and placed the silver pendant in John's hand. "It's not a gift," she said. "It's a truth." John looked around the fire. Every face, every eye was filled with hope and fear and belief. He placed the pendant around his neck, and the children cheered, not loud, but proud. Their leader was not a king, not a warrior, not a chosen one by blood, but by choice. The next morning was quiet. Too quiet. The sky was dark, though the sun had already risen. The wind carried a strange tension, like something was about to snap. John walked through the camp, the silver pendant resting on his chest. No guards blocked his way, no miners mocked him. Everywhere he looked, eyes watched him, not with hate, not with fear, but with hope. Lyra walked beside him, holding the old wooden bowl from the meal ceremony. She didn't speak, but her presence said everything. You're not alone anymore. Behind them marched children, then elders, then workers, alien and human, all silent, all united. It was no longer just a story. It was a movement. Inside the command tower, alarms were flashing. Guards rushed from room to room. Screens showed the growing line of aliens walking through the center of the camp. The crowd was getting bigger every minute. He's marching toward the central gate. One officer shouted. The captain slammed his fist on the table. They're rising behind him. Another screen showed humans joining in. Some workers dropped their tools and followed the alien children. A few even saluted John as he passed. He's turning into a symbol, the captain said coldly. A worker leading a rebellion. That cannot happen. Down at ground level, the lead guard and his unit blocked the main gate with electric rifles drawn. John stopped just a few feet away. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make threats. He just looked at them. Lyra stepped forward. She placed the wooden bowl on the ground between the guards and the people. Then she said loudly, "You took food from our mouths." He gave it back. "You ignored our cries." He listened. The lead guard barked, "Step back, or we use force. John took a slow breath. If you strike now, you strike your own future. One of the human miners behind him added, you starved us too. Another, we were just numbers to you. The guards shifted uneasily. Their rifles buzzed. But no one fired, not yet. Suddenly, a new voice rang out crackling through the loudspeakers above the camp. It was the captain himself. All workers and non-authorized aliens return to your quarters or be considered traitors. But no one moved. Final warning, disperse immediately. Still, silence. Then something unexpected happened. One of the guards, young, nervous, stepped away from the line. He dropped his weapon, walked over to John, and bowed. The others gasped. Another guard followed. Then another. Soon, 5 guards had lowered their rifles and bowed in the tower. The captain shouted, they've lost control. He turned to his officers. If they won't act, I will. But when he rushed outside, he froze. The people weren't just standing anymore. They were kneeling, not in fear, but in choice. Even humans, even guards, a sea of bowed heads. All facing one man-attired human worker who once gave away his last bite. John stepped forward, and for the first time, he raised his voice. Not to demand, not to threaten, but to remind. We came here to work. We were told to survive. But we are more than tools, more than labor. He looked around. You see alien children? I see the future. He looked at the captain. You see rebellion? I see hunger, turning into hope. Then he said the words that echoed through the crowd like thunder. We rise, not with fists, but with full hearts. The captain knew he was defeated. He turned and walked away, alone. No one followed him, not even his own men. That night, the camp changed. The guards no longer ruled by fear. The food was shared equally. The old shelter became a place of learning and stories. And at the center of it all was John, not on a throne, not with power, but sitting by the fire, laughing with children, and beside him, always, was Lyra. Weeks passed. More people arrived, curious about the human leader of aliens. Some came with doubt. They left with tears, because they saw something rare. A community born from hunger. A leader chosen not by blood, but by compassion. One evening, Lyra stood up in front of the group and said, many of you ask why we follow him. She pointed to the bowl, the same old wooden one, because once he gave us food, but more than that, he gave us our worth. She turned to John, and once more she bowed, this time not just in front of children, but in front of a world.